turn the time over to you, Laura. Would you mind taking us through the 12 T's? And if you want to say something more about joining us today, you're welcome to.
First, I have to say, is Trina not the cutest person ever? That's my opening. If anybody, you are so darling, and you're doing such a great work, and it's super fun to have a partner in this so important work of strengthening marriages intimately. So I just adore you. All of my podcasts, all of my seminars, I start with, we get to talk about sex today.
Yes.
How fun is that?
Yes.
So that's what we get to do today. All right, so I'll just kind of run through these. You want me to try to keep it to kind of 15 minutes, so I'm going to really briefly throw them out there, and then we'll kind of see if people have more questions as we go, because most of your questions, I think, kind of fit into going into more detail with any of these items or any of these 12 T's. Mm-hmm. So the 12 T's, and I call these the 12 essential ingredients for creating a sextraordinary marriage. And these ones are specific to, obviously, knowing her intimately. My next book that I'm working on will be, I don't know, I don't think it's 12. Right now it's just 10. 10, they're not T's. They're not going to all be one nice letter, but 10 keys for knowing him sexually will be the next book. So we can wait on that. That'll be a while still. So number 1 is transforming your sexual identity. That's kind of the first start for everybody. Some women will be able to skip over this one because they got this. They've embraced their sexuality. They know that they're a sexual being. They see sex as an important part, not only of connecting with their husbands, but a part of their own wholeness and aliveness. If they haven't done that step, everything else will be hard to do. So it just kind of depends on where you're at. I was just talking with the client last week, and she's like, okay, I'm struggling to figure out how to do this, transform my sexual identity. Because right now, yeah, I mostly do it for my husband. This is kind of, sex is his thing. It's not my thing. And I said, okay, well, one of the best ways to work on this first T is to develop your flirtiness. Because when you start being flirty, you are taking on and embracing your own sexuality as something that you do as much for you as also for your husband. And so now we're just working on things like, I had the cutest older couple in here a couple weeks ago, and she's like, she had seen my KSL TV interview where I was talking about fun and flirty in the bedroom, and she said, I don't think I have any idea how to even do this. And so we were going through, okay, could you, they've been married like 40 years. This is like brand new stuff for them. And she said, and I said, so could you walk up to your husband in the kitchen and smack his butt? And she's like, she has this little weird look on her face, and she's like, maybe. So priceless. So, but that's just one of the easy ways. We're really just looking for, like it said, if anybody wants to do this and go to my website, it's my counseling website, Marital Intimacy Institute.com. While you're listening and go to my resource page, I'm kind of walking through one of my handouts that's there. I've got all my good handouts there now because I just want to get it out to people. But you could kind of follow along, and it might be easier for you if you want to take your screen over to maritalintimacyinstitute.com, Laura's resource page, and then find the 12, they're all alphabetical, 12 essential ingredients. So transformed, I'll move on quicker with the rest of these, but this is just where you're very intentional about your sexuality. You accept that you are a sexual being, you embrace that you're a sexual being, and then you actually nurture your sexuality. So a lot of what we tell our maybe young men about sexuality to no, and don't, and don't think about it, we're kind of having to tell women the opposite. Where they are actually taking it in and embracing it and cataloging it, almost a romantic feeling you might have from a chick flick or a song on the radio or anything, so that you can recall it when the time presents itself that you could be intimate. Okay, so any questions on, actually, let me just ask, any questions on transforming sexual identity? Does that give you the gist? Okay. Okay, number 2, thoughts and beliefs. This is related also to the transforming your sexual identity, because if these 2 steps don't get done, nothing else will be easy to do. If these 2 steps are already in place, you can skip them and then go into the rest. Thoughts and beliefs is that for women especially, sex starts in the mind. And so if in our minds we have a bunch of garbage about sex, about sexuality, about our bodies, body image issues, any of those things, if we've got negative core beliefs about sex, sex is bad, sex is dirty, sex is takes too long, sex is messy, any of these core beliefs are going to mess with your ability to get aroused and your ability to click into desire. Okay, so then there's a lot, and this is kind of the sexy as a state of mind stuff that I think we'll talk about a little bit more. And so not only do we need to have a nice, clean, positive mental slate about sex, but then that's kind of the outside the bedroom stuff. But then if we move into the inside the bedroom kind of stuff, good sex is also a mental discipline for women. And I think that's one of the questions that people have later. But for women especially, we're the World Wide Web, so we're thinking about 59 things at all times. In fact, I bet everybody listening right now is doing at least 1 or 2 other things at the same time, which is okay. And so that World Wide Webness is great, but in the bedroom, if we can't close all those windows, those screens on our computer and go into that one screen that's sex, we're gonna have a hard time letting our body actually get aroused. So we've got the outside the bedroom thoughts and beliefs, we've got the inside the bedroom mental discipline, because we've got to be able to focus, relax, tune in, and let go. And that all takes mental discipline. So that's why those 2 steps are just critical to get those in. Okay, any questions about thoughts and beliefs? Is that got the gist of it? You can I can see some of you, so you can shake your head if you want to. Okay, number 3 is probably the most important one in general, because it's the tenderness, thoughtfulness, trust. It's the emotional climate. It's the connection, the warmth, the closeness of the intimate relationship, which for most women, about 80% of women, it's that emotional connection that is our primary fuel for desire. Okay? Men, most men, 80% of men, their primary fuel is really the testosterone. That's what gives them that extra edge where they can kind of want to a lot more quickly. Whereas we're technically, and hopefully we'll get into this, but we're 4 steps away. This is my rocket diagram. This handout is also on MaritalIntimacyInstitute.com on the resource page, because women are 4 steps. I guess we won't really get into this if I don't go into it right now, but we're 4 steps away from desire, because our step 0, you can't probably see this real well, but step 0 is the emotional climate, which we're talking about. And I'll just quickly mention the others. Step 1, sex is a decision. We make a mental decision to say, yeah, my husband wasn't a jerk today. He took out the garbage without me asking. Yeah, I can go there. But we still don't have any desire in hand, technically. Step 2 is we now kind of get connected with a little bit emotionally, like, how was your day? Or things that I love about you, or things that your husband maybe is, you're both just talking in ways that connect you emotionally. That's step 2. Step 3 is now we're moving into some of the foreplay or the actual physical arousal. And as you, as a woman, start to move up the arousal scale, like a 3, 4, 5 on the arousal scale, then you get to step 4, which is where your husband starts, and that is desire. So we're 4 steps away from where they start, and that's really important to know. So I would challenge you all to go find this on my website, or Trina, you share it somehow so that they've got access to that. Okay? Okay, so this tenderness, thoughtfulness, trust. The other little thing that comes up a lot with this is that, I should close my window, that's noisy, sorry. Another thing that comes up with this a lot is if there is not safety, like emotional safety in the relationship, if we're dealing with addiction, if we're dealing with just very self-centeredness a lot of times, that makes it super hard for a woman to want to get naked for her husband. If he's critical, if he's unkind. And so that's why there's I've got plenty of work as a marriage counselor and a sex therapist to just get that relationship good enough and solid enough and close enough to where a woman can say, okay, I feel safe enough being naked in front of you. especially where we don't have that desire so quickly. Okay, so that's number 3. This is our fuel. Any questions about tenderness, thoughtfulness, trust, the emotional climate? Got it? Number 4 is time. The rest of these will go a little quicker. Time is just, again, we've got so many things on our plate all the time. And so if we don't make our intimate relationship and even our sexuality just as something we're working on, a high priority, it might not ever get to the top of your list. I have so many. One of the first things in the husband's book that I'm working on is the number one thing I hear from men and that they want is they don't just want to be loved, they want to be wanted. They want to be desired. But if we just never, and they want to be important. I mean, that's related. And I've got one husband I'm thinking of, and he's just like, Laura, I never get to the top of my wife's to-do list. I never do. She finishes one project, she picks up 3 more. And I don't ever make it up there. So if we don't proactively choose to make that a priority, it might not happen. Okay, so there's time and priority. That's kind of that T. Number 5 is transition. I talked a little bit about this with the rocket diagram, but there is a transition process to get us from, you know, where we are all day, every day. We're in 59 other places. And so it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have sex now. Okay, close all those windows. Okay, did I lock the door? Okay, did I set the lunch out? You know how we are. We have so many things on our mind. So we need a process where we're actually kind of closing that all down and connecting and focusing on our husband and on being intimate and just basking in that experience. And so we kind of need to learn some of that process. And in the book, one of the things that I think I talk about in that one is bridges to desire. And I've got a handout on my Marital Intimacy Institute again, where you can walk through and do this with your husband. And Trina, you could maybe go grab that for them. Where we're coming up with things, it's his, hers, and ours, bridges. And so it's things that he can do to help you transition into lovemaking. It's hers, things you can do to transition into lovemaking. And it's ours, things that we can do together to transition into lovemaking. And a common one for ours would be maybe give her a little bit of a back massage to kind of help her warm up. Okay, so that's the transition, number 5. Okay, number 6 is talk. And this is, again, a lot of these have an outside the bedroom element and an inside the bedroom element. So talk is kind of the primary way outside the bedroom that we feel connected and close to our spouse. Again, that's our fuel for desire, or one of the main ways we feel desire. So with, oh, you know what, I better go back. Back to number 3, tenderness, thoughtfulness, trust. The biggest part of that one, of building that emotional climate, is probably my love language worksheet. And that's on my website as well, where you go through and I don't want to just know what love language you are. You might know your acts of service or quality time or words of affirmation. That's not enough in my book. We need 10 specific things that make you feel loved, and your spouse also needs to do 10 specific things that make you feel loved, because that's your specific fuel that makes you want to be intimate and to flip your switch to, yes, I'll go there. Okay, so that's back to number 3. Back to 6, talk. So we've got the talk that's going on outside the bedroom just to connect, to learn each other, to know each other. That's why I use the word knowing her intimately as my book title, is that's the biblical term for sex, is to know. And so talk is one of the ways we get to know. It's cute. I was just working with a young couple the other day, and I was just like, guys, you're at the point where you have to talk a lot. You have to explain things. You have to communicate. I'm at the point where we kind of get it now, and we kind of can read each other a little bit. But if people don't do that first phase of teaching and learning, they can't get to the tuned in, which is number 9 we'll get to. So that's the talk outside the bedroom. The talk inside the bedroom, though, is there may be a missing element to arousal for women that we're kind of missing out on. We know that men, for example, are very visually stimulated, very tactily stimulated, but we may not realize that women are very auditorily stimulated. And what that means is sometimes if a woman or the man, but sometimes in the beginning it needs to start with the women. And I have another handout on this. It's also in your book, auditory arousal. but sometimes it's nice to just have little handouts that you can just read with your husband. And so this auditory arousal, there are 4 different levels of it, but I'm going to just start with simple. If women will allow themselves to express what they're feeling, even just like a or an ah, or that feels good, because then it does a couple things. It helps your brain be more focused, helps your brain be more engaged, but it also allows you to let go because it commands your attention. And that's one of the big challenges that women have in the midst of lovemaking. So that's the inside and outside the bedroom kind of talk and why that's so important. Okay, do you get that? Good stuff there.
Yes.
Number 7, and Trina, just interrupt me if there's something I should go into, okay?
Okay, awesome.
Number 7 is touch. This again has an outside the bedroom and an inside the bedroom element. With touch, a lot of couples, especially women, feel like they're not getting enough affection, the non-sexual kind of touch and connection. It's super sad. Just probably a couple weeks ago, I had 2 women in the same week that said, Laura, I almost exactly remember when I decided early on in our marriage that I would never reach out and touch my husband again. Never. Why? Because they learned that it always leads to sex. It always goes somewhere. And I don't want to do that. I feel like a piece of meat. I never get affection that is just affection. And so I'm out. And then 15 years later, I'm trying to help them restore touch. And so a common piece of homework I'm giving couples is Sunday night at 9 o'clock, you're going to cuddle or snuggle or sit on the couch, and you're going to be touching and affectionate, but it's not going to go anywhere. No strings attached. We're not going anywhere with this. And so that both husbands and the wives can relearn touch. Okay, so we've got to have a plenty good supply of affection for outside the bedroom. Okay, but now inside the bedroom, we obviously need to have enough of a good kind of touch in the bedroom, or we're not going to be able to get a woman to an orgasm. And it's true for men too, and it's especially true for men as they get older. They need a little bit more touch than they used to need before, which is fine. It's great. In fact, it's kind of awesome because in some ways, men become a little bit more like their wives. And wives, if they're doing their work to embrace and nurture their sexuality, they can become a little bit more like their husbands kind of used to be, which can make for a really awesome place. And it's kind of why in my first book, And They Were Not Ashamed, I say I truly believe that desire gaps can diminish. And I don't even think you have to wait till you get old. I'm just saying that if you don't figure it out by the time you get old, getting old will actually kind of help you. Everybody hates when I say that, especially the men, but it's true. So there you go. Let's see. And specifically about the touch in the bedroom, just because sometimes we don't know this. I was telling my daughter this, and she's like, Mom, I don't think I was teaching a class that she was in. She's at school here. And she said, Mom, I think there's a bunch of people in that class who are like, oh my goodness, I don't think I've ever heard the word clitoral stimulation before. But that's what I'm talking about. If there isn't enough clitoral stimulation, that's a very important part of arousal and orgasm for a woman. And so it's a clitoris is the same cells, the same parts that created a penis. And so you can just kind of think of the analogy of how important that would be. And it's funny, I don't know exactly what God was thinking. I have some ideas, but it's funny that he didn't make that super connecting through intercourse alone. So I think that just creates an opportunity for couples to really get in there and figure some things out together. Okay. Number 8, sorry, I'm taking more than 15 minutes. Number 8 is technique and education. And I guess that's kind of where this rocket diagram comes back to again. If people don't know this page, they're not going to get this, because that is just key. The other piece of technique and education that I talk about in the chapter is that couples, number 1, need to understand the differences between male-female sexual wiring. If they don't get that, then they're just kind of at odds with each other all the time. He's thinking she's broken, she doesn't work right, and she sometimes agrees with him because she doesn't know any better. And she just doesn't know, we're just wired differently. So there's the wiring differences, number 1, and then there's these 12 T's, number 2, and then there's going to be the 10 keys for men. Those are going to be the 3 key things that couples just have got to know. And so if any of your people want to share this rocket diagram like candy, go for it. I'm sorry. I mean, it's got my reference on there, so just go for it. Just go for it. So that's the technique in education, because if we don't understand some of those basics, we really just, I just laugh every time a husband says to me, why did you write a almost 400-page book, my first one, and then what in the world did you have to say in a 300-page book, the second one? He's like, what's there to know? I'm like, dude, you are exactly why I wrote these books. And so there's a lot to know. But the last thing with the technique in education is, if you cannot talk, and I should have mentioned this back in the talk section, if you cannot talk with each other about sex, and I think it's super cute that I've got some of you that are husbands and wives both listening, and that's awesome. If you can't talk about sex, you're not going to be able to figure each other out well, because no book is going to be able to accurately give you the specific information that you can only learn from your spouse. And so that's an important piece of it as well. Okay, so that's 8, technique in education. Number 9 is tuned in. I think it's kind of my favorite. I love them all, but I kind of love tuned in when I came up with that, because I was like, that's the magic that can happen when couples can do this work, figure this stuff out, and be able to say, I get my spouse, I get my husband, I know what he's thinking, I know how to think like him, he knows how to think like me. And that's just the outside the bedroom stuff. But the inside the bedroom stuff, I mean, think about it, ladies. We don't want to be directing traffic in the middle of the bedroom activities. And so if you guys haven't talked about what to do and what not to do, or using some auditory arousal to say, don't move there, or come back there, then you know, you've got to just be tuned into that stuff. But it takes work and time and effort to get to that state. But it's so worth the effort. And that's what I think, it's kind of what I think God had in mind when he said, I want oneness in marriage. I want you to be one. So that's my tuned in. And that's the knowing each other. You know each other so well, you're tuned in, you get each other. Number 10, teasing and playfulness. I love this one. I've got a KSL Studio 5 TV interview on this one as well, where for me as a marriage counselor and a sex therapist, when couples are playful, for me, it's almost the trump card as to when a couple is really doing well. Because to be playful, not just sexually, but just to be that lighthearted playfulness, you really have to have a lot of this all put together to do it well. Because otherwise you're just, couples in the beginning, when we try to start playfulness, it's just, somebody does something to be playful, but they take it wrong or they get offended. And, and so it's just, there's a lot of work to do sometimes to get to where playfulness works. And that playfulness is that flirtiness that then, going back to number 1, transforming our sexual identity, is that it's not just the fun general playfulness, but it's the sexual flirty playfulness. And so that just, and not only that, but think about being in the bedroom. Like, think about maybe even the first time you have sex. I'm working with a lot of college students now and getting married and, honeymoon stuff. And so, even just that first time, if you guys are, if couples are super serious about what's going on and it's nervous and it's whatever, it's super awkward and difficult and not super fun. But if you're just like, oh, wow, that didn't work, or, oh, whoops, if you're just playful and fun and lighthearted, then we can figure anything out. And so that's why that's really important. Number 11 is treats. This is one where this is the first chapter men go to. I'm just like, really, people? But treats you can't go to if you haven't done the work before. Because if a husband comes to a wife and she hasn't embraced her sexuality and is still ticked at him because he's a jerk most of the time, and he comes to her and says, hey, I want to have sex in a tent in the backyard, she's going to be like, take a hike. No. I don't want to. And so treats is just my treats section is because I am very serious about couples being able to do this for the long haul and have a great, good, connected, sextraordinary marriage for the long haul. But if we don't add in some of that novelty and playfulness and fun and flirty, then it gets stale and it gets old. And that's why, and that's part of why we have 30-year marriages ending and 20-year marriages ending. That's heartbreaking for me. So yeah, we definitely need something that's going to take us through the long haul. So that's treats. Number 12, this is awesome section because this transcendence and surrender. If a woman cannot relax, let go, focus, surrender, she's going to have a hard time having an orgasm, because an orgasm is an involuntary response. It happens as a result of letting go. But the place, and I think one of the questions that you had was, why is this so hard for women? And I mean, there's a lot of reasons. Let me think. I think I wrote some of these down, but there's a lot of reasons. But one of them in particular is that women also tend to be very kind of control oriented. I know none of you here are at all. But that control element, letting go of control. I had one cute wife where she was just like, you know, what if I say something stupid? She hadn't had an orgasm before. What if I say something dumb? What if I look dumb? What if I act dumb? So that, you know, your ability to just let go of that and feel safe enough with your partner that you can look dumb if you need to, which you won't, and that he won't notice if you look dumb because he's pretty occupied himself. And so, you know, but that also can come from fears, past history with sexuality, letting go of control, feeling safe emotionally. Those are some of the reasons that women struggle to do surrender and transcendence. And I talk a little bit in there, a piece that'll actually be probably chapter 1 or 2 in the men's book, about how men need to be doing bridling and surrendering while we're doing embracing and nurturing. Did you catch that little dilemma, that little paradox? Men are doing bridling and surrendering. Why? Because if they do not, then, and a woman never really feels like she can choose in or out, if she feels like she has to do this and it's duty and obligatory and guilt because he's a grump for 3 days if she doesn't, if she cannot choose in or out, then he can never get the very thing he wants, which is, I want you to want me. But if she can only do it to respond to his need, he can only get the cheap kind, the duty sex. And that's huge. And people don't know that. And nobody talks about that. But that's going to be big, big deal for my next book. And I've got a little bit, in fact, on my website, my current blog is success stories of men that have done surrender and have been able to work through providing. I mean, I've got probably 3 couples right now that our single focus is getting her agency back after 20, 30 years of marriage, because she's lost it. She does it out of duty. She does not feel she can choose. And he's got to bridle the heck out of his sexuality if he wants her to be able to give her the good kind of sex. Okay, there's the 12.